Imagine knowing exactly what your students are learning and exactly which steps you need to take next.
Join us in Down with the Reading Quiz to craft meaningful and productive formative assessments that move away from gotcha moments of basic recall and toward assessing what your students actually can do.
In this 30-minute free masterclass, we'll share 3 powerful assessment keys that work for any novel at any time of the year.
Head to shop.bravenewteaching.com/masterclass to sign up, and we'll also send you a free workbook to keep track of all your notes.
Once again, that's shop.bravenewteaching.com/masterclass to nail formative assessments forever.
Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Marie.
What are you up to later? Want to join me for happy hour?
I'm all in.
And guess what's amazing? Our listeners and friends of the podcast can also join us because Brave New Teaching Happy Hour has officially launched. Cheers!
Cheers, everyone. We are officially hanging out a little bit longer after school with an extended, extra private podcast feed just for you.
Yes. Members of Happy Hour get extra 15 minutes of the podcast, give or take, because you know us, we run a little bit long. It's just kind of how we are. But if you would like to get in on this Happy Hour action, please join us. It is only $5 a month. Head to curriculumrehab.com/happy hour and get yourself signed up, because when you're there, Amanda, tell our friends what we do every month for our Happy Hour members.
I think my favorite part is coming up with a new free resource for our listeners every month. And then we pretty much break down that resource and how to use it. We also like to have guests on to do extended episodes and even Q&A that's just for you about that resource. It's really exclusive and super private just for you.
So if you are like us and you like hanging out, you like chit-chatting about all things that are teaching, teacher life, and everything under that umbrella, join us for happy hour and we will see you there. Bye.
Bye.
Well, hello and welcome back to Brave New Teaching. Today's episode is all about pacing. We're actually going to have a few episodes about pacing. Today's episode is going to be really small and specific. We might even get a little bit more micro, but today we're talking about a class period. How to pace out your teaching in a single class period on a single day. Please make sure to head to the show notes or reach out to us, tag us on Instagram, DM, and let us know what else you want to talk about having to do with pacing. I want to say this at the very beginning because we're thinking about how to pace a lesson. That doesn't seem to be too much of a question that we get, but we do get questions about pacing a class period, pacing a unit, pacing a whole curriculum map. So today we're going to go kind of small, micro, and look at the class period and how we get from bell to bell and feel accomplished and get the things done that we want to get done.
And here's why this is important, you guys. Pacing a single class period might sound kind of trivial on the surface, but this is what you're going to write down when you're getting observed. This is what you're going to provide to an administrator. And this is also the practice, like when you get into good habits in pacing your class periods, this is where you see the overlap into positive classroom management things happening. You run into a lot fewer issues when your pacing is on point. So 2 really important reasons to jump into this today, and I'm so excited.
Let's do it. Cue that music.
You're listening to Brave New Teaching, a podcast for educators challenging the status quo. I'm Amanda, and I'm a high school English teacher in Illinois.
And I'm Marie, and I'm also a high school English teacher in Southern California. We're so glad you're here. Enjoy the show. Okay, everybody. So before we actually start getting into how each of us paces and figures out the timing of a single class period, I want to let you know that we are going to have all the things that we talk about here in a template for you, because Amanda and I have pretty different actually methods for the way that we pace our class periods, but you'll see that we get a lot of the same stuff done. But we will have kind of just little templates, flow charts for you so that you can download those and actually see it on paper after listening to us ramble and birdwalk our way through this podcast episode. So
I'd say another quick heads up. Marie, we didn't talk about this before, but Marie and I are currently not on a block schedule of any sort. But what I want to offer to you guys, what we're going to talk about today is more about a template. So you can adapt. We're not going to give you a minute by minute playbook. We're going to give you a template of what to think about when you're pacing whatever kind of class period you're dealing with.
Absolutely. So Amanda touched a little bit on the importance of really focusing in on pacing, because like she said at the beginning of the episode, like it is something that feels trivial, and it is something that's like, are you kidding me? I already know how to do that. Except we all get evaluated every so often, and that is always something that comes up either as a comment or something that you have to report how pacing goes. It is also something that for the two of us, especially that teach collaborative SPED and gen ed courses, pacing has a huge piece in differentiating instruction. Your pacing is a really big piece of that puzzle. So if we haven't sold it to you enough, it's also the most common question that we get. So we thought we would address it right now. And
I think it's something that also gets us in trouble. Like I can't tell you how many times I've had people, my team be like, we didn't get to this today, so it's going to go to tomorrow. And then that happens again in the same week. And then all of a sudden a 6-week unit has turned into a 9-week unit. Blech. And that's not great. That's not great because it's, it doesn't, in the moment, you're like, oh, I just want to finish this thing. I didn't finish this thing, so it's fine. But at week 9, you're like, I should have just let it go. But it's too late.
You're like, I never want to talk about this ever again.
It's
as long as I live.
You. You've done this 1,000 times.
Well, and I mean, newer and veteran teachers alike, like I get cocky. I get real big for my britches. And I'm like, I don't need to think this through. I do it to this day where I'm just like, I'll just post-it note it and it'll be fine. I don't need to figure out how long everything's going to take. And then all of a sudden it's the end of class and I'm like, oh crap.
I only got halfway through.
What was I doing? So this bears repeating for all of us. And I mean, once again, I am not innocent to the pacing pitfalls, because while I know what to do I always do those things? No, because I'm a doofus. But we're all doofuses together, right? Right?
We are. I'm
not alone, right? Okay. So I know that we have different methods for really getting in the middle of pacing our class periods, but the beginning is the same. It's the same as we do everything. Start with the end in mind. Go, Amanda. Run with it.
Okay, so everyone listening, I should make you all take a pledge and hold up your right hand.
Can we make buttons?
Repeat after me. I will not plan my lesson with the first thing we're doing in class. I will plan it with the last thing we're doing in class. We have got to start our pacing and our planning with the last thing that's going to happen before the bell rings. If we don't, it won't get done regularly, right?
Or you'll have that weird awkward thing where you've got 10 minutes left and you're like, boodly boo, which is it's not a bad problem to have all the time. Every now and then be like, everybody take out your book and read, or who wants to ask me a question? Not a bad problem to have peppered into your weeks, but when you're consistently wasting your instructional minutes and practice time and face time with your students because you're like, I'm done. That's a pacing problem.
Also, kids can smell it from a mile away, and they know that you weren't planning on giving them 7.5 random minutes to start the homework assignment that they very easily could do at home. And so they're going to start to misbehave. You're going to get issues happening there. I can see 24-year-old Amanda trying to convince sophomores at my high school that this is time for homework. Please sit down and work on your blah, 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 blah. And the kids being like, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's almost lunch, lady.
And then I'm
Goodbye
yelling
now.
at kids. I'm yelling, stop throwing empty Gatorade bottles. Stop. Put your phones away.
Yeah.
Right. I created that opportunity for kids to misbehave because I wasn't bell to bell with engaging, purposeful content. Right.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I will definitely, I mean, if my goal at the end of the period is 10 minutes to begin their homework because
correct,
such and such is complicated or whatever, like, then that is a defined moment of my class time.
Yes.
10 minutes to start, 15 minutes to start. Absolutely. So we're not saying do away with that. We're just saying without the boodly boo.
No boodly boo, and you can't try to fake it because you're panicking. This will happen to you many times in your career, and then it will be so painful to correct all the behaviors that you'll start changing what you do. So we definitely would both recommend, for me, my lessons typically are in like 4 segments. And so I have, I'm not fancy, but like every lesson for me has an opening. Wow, I know. Copyright Meta Teaching 2021. An opening, some type of instruction. It might be review. It might be direct instruction. It might be a video. It might be reading together or something. Then there's some kind of practice. And then there's a close. So I try to make sure those 4 things happen every single day religiously. So the close might just be like an exit slip. It could be a 30-second activity. The close might be 10 minutes to share out something that they were writing. It might be 6 minutes where they're going to turn and talk to a partner about something that they did. It might be, hey everyone, don't forget to post this on Google Classroom before you leave. Bye. But no matter what, like the close, there is closure to the lesson. And that's what I missed my first few years of teaching, is that everything just kind of ran into the bell and was homework
and it was like, make sure you do. Yeah. Like, wait. Yes.
Yes. It was so fluid that I was like, oh yeah, look at me. I'm so flexible. And like flexibility is great, but it's also at the expense sometimes of what kind of things that structure provides for students.
Certain types of flexibility. You want flexible, like controlled flexibility. Yeah.
Correct. So I found that having like some type of planned closure, even if that's just a routine that your class does every day, even if it's not an academically connected, if that's something that the kids do at the end of every class period to, sign off or whatever that might be.
But building in that specific dedicated moment.
It's there.
Absolutely.
And that's key.
So my class period structure a bit differently. I think I visualize and I conceptualize them differently. We're going to talk about normal life. We're going to talk about not virtual, just normal life. Normal life, I'm on a block schedule and it is 90-minute class periods. Virtual life, I'm on an 80-minute class period schedule where I have the opportunity to see students every single day. I like to break my class periods that are blocks like that up into acts because I'm a former theater teacher. I like to break it up into 3 30-minute chunks. And those 30-minute chunks come, or 30-ish minute, come with a break of movement and something different twice a class period. For a 90-minute class period, I might do, I might have 3 breaks or 2 breaks in an 80-minute class period. When I used to teach on a semester schedule, we had 50-minute class periods every day-ish, and we had like a modified block. And so in those 50-minute class periods, we would go like 20 to 25, some sort of a break. And sometimes that break is get up and touch the farthest point in the room from you and, say a limerick and sit back down, like whatever it is. Or maybe it's a little bit longer, or maybe it's ask me a question and everybody stand up, stand on one foot, whatever, like something to break it up. And then we jump back into what we were doing, or that's where our transition is triggered. So I look at mine in different sorts of chunks. I also remember, guys, I have gigantic class sizes. So you have to get the bodies shifting and moving a little bit because everybody doesn't have their own space in my classroom, which when you think about like a post-COVID world is like, bleh. But we're pretty packed into my classroom. So we have to get up and move and have a change of status a little bit. So that's how I think about it. Like whatever the last thing is that I want to have happen is going to happen in my 3rd act of like my 90-minute class period. And then I would move back to whatever that, second intermission is going to be, and the first intermission all the way back to curtain up. And that's like how I get through it or how I see the big chunks. I mean, it's wonderful when it's like opening activity and mini lesson, first break, practice, break, questions, and, like discussion, and then closing. Wonderful when that works out, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I make sure that those are like my placeholders.
That's beautiful.
Isn't
I love
it?
that. I feel like that is very similar, but I think trying to do 4 segments in that much time would actually be kind of chaotic. I think that's a really beautiful. The 3 works really well for that timing.
It does, and it kind of goes with the whole like psychology of threes. Like it works. It works for the way that I template out my weeks as well, because we will have like coffee shop mode days where we are literally just working and reading solo, but it makes me build in time that I say, okay, everybody pause, write down one concern or idea and one question. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're starting with those, right? Like you were saying, it safeguards against behavior because there's a sweet spot of time that students can really be working on their own before they start to get punchy. I mean, that's how I am. I can't be on my own too long, or I'm my own worst enemy. Like I'll sit there grading, a certain amount of time will go by, and then I'll start talking to kids. And then I wonder why they're misbehaving. And I'm like, well, because I started it. Because I couldn't very well leave them alone. But those like breaks, and it doesn't have to be anything epic. It can literally be 2 minutes, but it's just something.
It's something. And I think that, so in a 50-minute class period for me, when I think about my 4 chunks and how I pace them, my chunk 1 and 4, so my opening and closing are usually the two things that I try to keep the shortest and the most consistent. So we talked about this in an episode earlier. I think we talked about in our routines or our classroom management episode.
While you're talking, I'll look it up so I can tell them what number.
Yeah, please do. Because I think, so for me, in terms of pacing, like those 2 pieces are predictably the same. So you can do whatever you want. But for me, my opening is a 5 to 7 minute bell ringer or bell work time, whatever that might be. So my different classes have different types of bell ringers. But for the most part, it's something that can be done silently, independently, and like self-sufficiently. Like, I guess that's kind of redundant, but they don't need me. So whatever those practices are, if it's vocabulary, if it's journaling, I want that first, for my own sanity and the way that I like class to start completely quiet. Because it's not going to stay that way. And that might be the only part of the day that is quiet. And it also provides, like, this is kind of coming from when I was a newer teacher. I had a lot of classroom management issues and kids that were misbehaving. And I had the gaggle of kids that like to crowd me at my desk and ask me about my personal life, like all the,
right.
Like the kids.
We're looking back, you're just like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh. And I really like to stand in the hallway and greet students as they come in.
Totally.
So, and I like to linger out there too, because sometimes what I'll do, another classroom management thing that I like to do is, have one-on-one conversations with kids that are starting to get out of line and like be in preventative maintenance mode. So I like to know that my first 5 to 7 minutes in my classroom, I've trained my kids to be quietly working on what they're supposed to be working on so that I can have those conversations. I can grab a teacher across the hall and tell her something. I can take attendance, 1 day a week or something. Send an email or respond to an email from a previous class period. Like, I had a lot of, it's changed as I've gotten older, but like still like that practice is really been important. Did you find that episode, Marie? When did we talk about?
I think we talked about it in our streamlining classroom management. It is episode 29 from season 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's important too. And then I think that, for me, I'd say just, the practice of building your pacing for that middle section of instruction and practice, it takes practice, and you should use a timer for all the things.
All the time.
Do the classroom timer if you're struggling with pacing. And if you, and for me, like my biggest struggle is I always did too much talking in the instruction part and not enough time for the practice part.
You and me both.
So,
yes.
And a lot of that comes down to your planning, understanding your curriculum better as you get better, and understanding the text that you're teaching as you teach them multiple times. That all really does help you focusing and narrowing. Like I always tried to do too much. And you don't that sounds good in the moment, but that kind of goes back to what we said earlier in the episode, is it starts to overflow and back up and back up and back up. And before you know it, it's a $5,000 flush down the sewer and you need a whole new pipeline and blah, blah, blah.
Now you're just talking about your own last fall. Oh, that's the summer. That's right. I would say, like, if I had my big pieces of advice for takeaways here are to start with the end, what they have to have, the information they have to have, what they have to have accomplished, like whatever that must have thing is for the end of the class period, figure that out, or routine, whatever it is, right? That. Set a time frame for that, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, 5 minutes. Then for me, it's figure out your chunks of where you're going to be able to break things up, and then fill in the gaps. So like the way a typical class period for me would go, if I am teaching a new lesson, right? Or just teaching a lesson in general. We are going to start with a bell ringer where students are working individually, but they also are in small groups. I have students in groups of 4 in my classroom. So like, I'm fine with them talking to each other, but they're in their stinking seat, or they're standing behind their stinking seat. And that is something that we practice. That is our beginning of class routine. You come in past me at the door. I say good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. We have a little chit chat as they come in, and they are working on that. And that all takes us about 10 minutes at the beginning of class, from bell to completing and putting away our bell ringer work. Like, they're working on it for like 5 minutes. We go over it for like 5 minutes. We move on. That bell ringer is normally the jumping off point for whatever it is that we're talking about that day. So then I would transition into delivering a mini lesson. And that mini lesson, I know some people are really strict, like workshop method. They are like 10 minutes for a mini lesson and that's it. And I'm like, listen, 20, 15 to 20, and then we'll call it a day. But I also have those block periods. So like that's it. And for me, I know that I can get my kind of rapport jokiness in 20 minutes where I couldn't do it in 10.
Right.
And that works for me. That works for my teaching style and for my practice.
Great.
Then it's normally time for a break. And then it's time for student practice. And then it's normally time for a break. And then it's time for questions and discussion and feedback. And then it's time for their assignment, right? Like that's how it works for me in those 3 chunks. And like you said, the timing, it depends, right? Like you might spill over into the next chunk of class. But if you have those really specific must do things that they must know, they must understand, they must be able to take away from that day, and those are your goals, have them written for yourself where you can see them so that you stay on task. And that's how to pace out your period.
And I think that's the key, is to have a structure. And I think that was definitely the biggest thing missing from my early years, is I would want to try all these new things. Today we're going to do a jigsaw. And so we would like start class and I'd be like, okay, today we're doing a jigsaw.
Yeah. and you'd be like, ugh.
Right. So what this becomes, like with what Marie just kind of went through, is it's not that we're not going to do a jigsaw, but I'm going to fit it into this template so that there's a predictable structure to my class feel every day. And if that means that jigsaw is planned for 2 days during that practice time, because it's going to take longer,
right,
then all of a sudden we're going to get into pacing a full unit, but I'm being more realistic because I'm going to be able to get, more organized in the way that I see my class period going, and that the kids can feel that similar energy. Like they're going to be more with it and on board and
the other thing this does socially and emotionally for our students is it relieves a lot of anxiety of like, what's going to happen next? If they know the flow of a class period in Mrs. Morris's classroom, then they know what to expect. And a lot of those undesirable behaviors that come out, a high percentage of them come from students not knowing what to do with their hands. If they know what to do with themselves, then they know what to expect. They know their part in, like they know where their cog in the machine goes, and they can help the machine go forward. Obviously, I mean, we're talking about real kids here. So like there are some that just want to put a wrench in the whole system. because they're turkeys for whatever reason. But most of the kids and most of the community in your classroom can continue to operate on a really functional, positive, and productive level if everybody knows how it goes. And so like Amanda was saying, maybe that jigsaw is in the practice part. I mean, however it is that you structure it. Once again, I think it just all comes back to routines.
Yes.
We're just going to keep talking about routines. Yeah.
But that's not that, but that just speaks
That's
to
so
what
good.
our practice is
Yes.
all about.
Yeah.
And that as you get better at routines, you'll also get better at pacing. As
Totally.
you get better at pacing, you'll also get better at knowing your curriculum and knowing your students. And you'll also get better at assessment because you're going to know how far kids can get. You'll be able to do all of these things work together. And so I'd say my last piece of advice would be in that template and in that mode. It all kind of comes back to, again, if you're getting evaluated and people are coming in to watch you teach, these are just real and comfortable ways to be in your classroom. You don't need to feel like you got to put on some kind of lesson plan show when someone comes to watch you teach, whether it's a colleague or an administrator. This is just good, natural teaching practice. So you don't need to feel like you're putting on a show or we're going to be stressed out and nervous when someone comes to watch us teach. But this, I think, offers you just a calm way to...
It's more of an invitation, like, hey, come on in, join us.
This is what we do.
I have to prepare.
How we do it.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is what we do in here. My students aren't going to get super weird because they're just doing what they always do with another person in the room. Yes,
yep.
Absolutely.
And that's that. And so hopefully that helps you guys think through, when you're doing your lesson, it's going to kill your anxiety so that because you also now have this predictable structure to settle into and feel comfortable. You know what you're planning for, you know what you need. Like, I need a week's worth of bell ringers. Okay. Ready, set, batch that out.
Yep.
I have a 5-day week coming up. I need 5 direct instruction lessons on how to write blah, blah, blah. And the kids are going to get 20 minutes to practice each day. Like, it's going to make your lesson planning in the bigger picture easier as you kind of start to work with templates and pacing that's familiar and similar day to day, rather than trying to do something crazy new all the time. And then when you do something crazy new and throw it all out the window, your kids are going to go nuts and be like so excited.
They're going to be so engaged. Yes. Because they're like, my winds are breaking to be today. I don't even, should I put my granola bar away or should I keep it handy? I don't know.
Oh, dear.
So exciting. All right, guys, we're getting weird. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Make sure you head over to our show notes, bravenewteaching.com, so that you can take a look at what a typical class period looks like in both of our classrooms, kind of like a checklist, little template of what we typically do in our rooms, what we've described for you today. And until we see you again, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.